Miller's Ridge, a town where nothing happens. Sarah lived in Miller's Ridge. It was a small, quiet town, people knew each other, nothing much happened in Miller's Ridge. Days were predictable, Sarah liked it that way. She worked at the library. Surrounded by books, she felt at peace. Life was simple, or so she thought. One cool evening, everything changed. Sarah was closing up the library. The sun was setting, long shadows stretched across the street. She glanced out the window. Something strange caught her eye. A cluster of lights hovered above the old water tower. They flickered and pulsed. An unnatural glow filled the sky. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What was happening? The lights pulsed with an eerie rhythm. They moved in patterns, up, down, side to side. Definitely not any aircraft Sarah had ever seen. She stepped outside for a closer look. The cool night air sent shivers down her spine. The lights seemed closer now, larger. Fear crept into her mind. Was this real? She rubbed her eyes. The lights remained. She wasn't dreaming. Sarah wasn't the only one who saw the lights. Soon people gathered in the streets. Whispers filled the air. What is that? Are those UFOs? Is it the government? Nobody had an answer. The crowd grew larger. The lights continued their mesmerizing dance. The once peaceful night had become a spectacle. Fear and excitement hung heavy in the air. The next day, the lights were the only thing people talked about. Theories ran wild. Alien invasion, government experiments, a hoax nobody knew for sure. The local newspaper, the Miller's Ridge Gazette, ran a front-page story with the headline, "Mysterious Lights Over Miller's Ridge." The story quoted several eyewitnesses, including Sarah. Suddenly she was at the center of the mystery. The sheriff, a burly man named Tom Higgins, tried to calm everyone down. He assured the town that it was probably just a weather phenomenon, but even he didn't sound convinced. Sarah felt a growing unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The lights were just the beginning. She could feel it in her bones. Something bigger was happening. Later that week, Sarah was working at the library when old man Jenkins came in. Jenkins was the town eccentric. He lived in a rambling old house on the edge of town. People said he was crazy. He claimed to have seen a lot of strange things in his life. Most people ignored him, but Sarah had always found him intriguing. "You saw the lights, didn't you, Sarah?" he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "I know what they are." Sarah listened intently. Jenkins leaned closer, his eyes gleaming. "They're a sign," he whispered. "A warning. Something is coming." He handed her a small leather-bound book. "This might help you understand." Before Sarah could ask him anything else, he shuffled out of the library. That night, Sarah examined the book Jenkins had given her. It was a peculiar gift, one that seemed out of place in the modern world. The book's cover was worn, its leather binding cracked and faded, hinting at the countless hands that had held it over the years. It was old, with yellowed pages and a musty smell. The scent of history wafted up as she turned each fragile page, a reminder of the book's age and the secrets it might hold. The language was strange, full of symbols and diagrams she didn't recognize. Each page was a puzzle, filled with cryptic messages that seemed to whisper to her from across time. She spent hours poring over the book, trying to decipher its secrets. The night grew darker, and the world outside her window faded away as she became more engrossed in the mysterious text. As she flipped through the pages, a small folded piece of paper fell out. She unfolded it carefully, her heart racing with anticipation. What could this hidden note reveal? It was a hand-drawn map. The parchment was delicate and the ink had faded in places, but the details were still clear enough to make out. It depicted the area around Miller's Ridge, with a series of strange markings and symbols. The map seemed to be guiding her to a specific location, but its purpose was still unclear. One symbol in particular caught her eye. It was more intricate than the others, almost as if it was meant to stand out. It was a circle with a dot in the center, surrounded by a series of concentric rings. The design was mesmerizing, and it seemed to pulse with a hidden energy. It looked familiar, but she couldn't place it. Suddenly she remembered. The memory was faint, but it was there, lurking in the back of her mind. She had seen that symbol before. It was etched into her memory, a fragment of a past encounter that she had almost forgotten. It was on the side of the water tower where the lights had appeared. The connection was undeniable, and it sent a shiver down her spine. She grabbed her radio, a vintage shortwave model she used to listen to late-night broadcasts. The radio was old but reliable, a link to the outside world and the mysteries it held. As she adjusted the dial, she heard a faint, rhythmic, pulsing sound, a signal. It was faint but unmistakable, a beacon calling out to her from the darkness. It was coming from the direction of the water tower. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. The symbol, the map, the signal, they were all connected. Sarah knew she had to investigate further, no matter the risk. The next morning, a stranger arrived in Miller's Ridge. The town was just waking up, the sun casting long shadows on the dusty roads. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and the distant hum of morning activity. He drove a dusty old pickup truck and wore a worn leather jacket. The truck's engine rumbled like a distant storm, drawing the attention of the few early risers. He had a rugged face and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. His presence was commanding, almost unsettling, as if he carried the weight of countless untold stories. He said his name was John, and he was passing through on his way north. His voice was deep, with a hint of an accent that was hard to place, but something about him didn't seem right. There was an air of mystery, a sense of hidden danger that made people uneasy. Sarah noticed him right away. She had a knack for sensing trouble, and this man set off all her internal alarms. He walked into the diner where she was having breakfast and ordered a cup of coffee. The room seemed to grow quieter as he entered, his presence demanding attention. He sat at the counter, his back to the wall, his eyes scanning the room. Every movement was calculated, every glance measured. He seemed out of place, like a predator in a cage full of unsuspecting prey. His demeanor was calm, but there was a tension in his posture, a readiness to spring into action. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that he was connected to the lights, to Old Man Jenkins's book, to the strange signal she had intercepted. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. She decided to follow him. Her instincts told her that this stranger was the key to unraveling the mysteries that had been plaguing Miller's Ridge. She had to know more, no matter the risk. Sarah followed John's truck to the outskirts of town. He parked near the old abandoned mine and started walking towards the entrance. She stopped her car a safe distance away and watched him. What was he doing? She remembered the map Old Man Jenkins had given her. The mine was marked on the map with the same strange symbol as the water tower. She couldn't let him go in there alone. Gathering her courage, Sarah got out of her car and called out to him, "John, wait!" He turned, his eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cold and sharp. "What do you want?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I know who you are," she said, "and I know what you're doing here." John stared at Sarah, his face unreadable. His eyes bore into hers, searching for something, perhaps a hint of understanding or a flicker of recognition. The tension between them was palpable, a silent battle of wills playing out in the dim light of the evening. For a moment, she thought he was going to attack her. Her heart raced, and she instinctively took a step back, her body tensing as she prepared to defend herself. The air around them seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken threat. But then he smiled, a slow, chilling smile that sent shivers down her spine. It was a smile that held no warmth, only a cold, calculated menace. She felt a wave of dread wash over her, realizing that this man was far more dangerous than she had initially thought. "You know nothing," he said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Sarah's mind raced, trying to decipher the meaning behind his cryptic statement. He turned and walked towards the mine entrance. His movements were deliberate, almost as if he was being drawn into the darkness by an unseen force. Sarah watched, frozen in place, as he disappeared into the shadows. Sarah tried to stop him, but he was gone. Her hand reached out instinctively, but it grasped only empty air. Panic surged through her as she realized she was alone, left with more questions than answers. She ran to the entrance and peered inside. The darkness seemed to swallow her gaze, offering no clues as to where John had gone. She hesitated, torn between the urge to follow and the fear of the unknown. The mine shaft stretched out before her, dark and silent. It was as if the very air inside was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The silence was oppressive, pressing down on her like a physical weight. John was nowhere to be seen. The emptiness of the mine was both a relief and a source of anxiety. She had hoped to find him to demand answers, but now she was left with only the echo of her own thoughts. She called out his name, but there was no answer. Her voice sounded small and insignificant against the vast emptiness of the mine. The only response was the mocking echo that bounced back at her, only the echo of her own voice in the darkness. It was a haunting reminder of her isolation, amplifying her sense of helplessness. She felt a chill run down her spine, the cold air of the mine seeping into her bones. She wanted to follow him, to find out what he was hiding, but something held her back. It was an instinctual fear, a primal warning that venturing further could lead to something far worse than she could imagine. A sense of dread washed over her. It was a feeling she couldn't shake, a deep-seated fear that something terrible was lurking just out of sight. She knew she had to make a choice, and quickly. She knew deep down that she would never see John again. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut, leaving her breathless and sorrowful. It was a painful acceptance, but one she couldn't deny, and she realized that the mystery of the lights was far from over. The strange glowing lights in the distance seemed to beckon her, promising more secrets and dangers yet to be uncovered. Her journey was just beginning. Life in Miller's Ridge went back to normal, or as normal as it could be after what had happened. The lights never returned. Neither did John. Old man Jenkins just smiled knowingly when Sarah asked him about it. He wouldn't say another word. Sarah couldn't forget what she had seen. The lights, the book, the stranger. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a glimpse of something vast and unknowable. She knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that Miller's Ridge held secrets. Secrets that went deeper than anyone could imagine. And she knew, with a growing sense of dread, that she was now a part of those secrets.